Poke the Bear is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 326, part of the CLNS Media Network. This show is brought to you by Game Time Tickets, the best place to buy NBA, NHL, and MLB tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. What time is it? Game time. My name is Conor Ryan, and once again, we are joined by the esteemed, the ever-knowledgeable Ty Anderson of 98.5 The Sports Hub. Ty, how you doing?
What is going on today? How are we feeling?
Doing pretty well, Ty. I was looking at the amount of coaching candidates the Bruins had that they either been linked to or make a lot of sense for a team that is trying to make some waves, make some noise this offseason. You can check one of them off the list on Friday morning. Rangers announced that they've signed Mike Sullivan to a contract. Apparently one of the highest paid, if not, I think the highest paid contract in NHL coaching history. So the Rangers, who had a disaster season, it's kind of been a theme in terms of some of these original six teams, but a disastrous season, move on from Peter Laviolette, bring in Mike Sullivan, a guy that made a lot of sense if you're the Bruins fans, got the connections, got the resume, got the obvious connections. What do you make of the news that Mike Sullivan no longer in the running for the Bruins head coaching job?
Yeah, I think this one probably played out the way that you should have expected it to. Obviously being a Marshfield guy, having coached here before, the things he said about Boston, it felt to me that he was an obvious candidate. And then I kind of asked around, poked around, and you got the sense that it wasn't quite the slam dunk that people like myself and people online and Bruins fans thought that it would be. And when I asked why do you think this is not the obvious move? It was sort of like, well, coaching Charlie McAvoy, it's a son-in-law. Yeah. But is that what you want to do? Is that, and are the Bruins a win now kind of team? And, I think they want to be the latter. They want to be a win now team, but look at the New York Rangers. I mean, that is a team that their window is right now. You look at how they are down the middle. You look at the contracts they have, the guy still on their books, what they're going to be paying Igor. There's no doubt what they want to be next year and the year after. It's Zibanejad, it's Trocheck, it's JT Miller, it's Chris Kreider. Some of those guys he's played with, he's coached at the Four Nations, so he knows what he has there. But let's be honest here. This is a reality, I think, check for Bruins fans to a certain degree. You're not a win now team right now. You want to be, but you're still a few steps away from truly confirming that. And that might hurt you with guys that are looking at their job openings or job offers and saying, no, I want to be somewhere where I know the goal is to win a Stanley Cup right away.
Yeah, it's almost like you don't go out and get JT Miller for what his contract is at his age, thinking that this is going to be an on-the-fly retool, right? Or rebuild, whatever you want to call it. This is clearly, and it seems like those were the reports from Pittsburgh where it felt like things were generally pretty copacetic in terms of Sullivan and his place, but from the reports of, what kind of spilled out after he, parts ways with the Penguins is that I think he had a differing viewpoint or look ahead at what the future held for Pittsburgh between him and Kyle Dubas, who I think feels like they need more of a legitimate retool or rebuild, I think, kind of more outright, which honestly feels like that's been brewing for a couple of years. And again, I feel like the Bruins got ahead of that a little bit in terms of ripping the Band-Aid off in March at the trade deadline. But to your point, it's still, the Bruins are kind of in this weird spot, right? Where, they obviously have the prestige, the whatever you want to call it, that kind of thing. But how much weight does that actually hold when they're a team that, yeah, they've got the market, they got the fan involvement, they got all that stuff. They have some superstars. You got David Pastrnak, you've got Charlie McAvoy, you've got good players in critical spots of the lineup. There's I think a lot of coaches can be like, all right, we can work with something here, but is that mean you're going to be in the playoffs next year? Or is it like, hey, I'm ready to buy in and we're going to be really damn good in 2 to 3 years, right? And does that kind of hurt how attractive you are as a destination for a coach? They're kind of in a weird spot, the Bruins, where they're kind of, I don't know if they're win now, but there's urgency, but where exactly are they on their timeline? Are they the Capitals 2 years ago? Or, it is kind of tough to see not what the appeal is, but how they make their pitch, because it's not kind of set in stone, right?
Right. And, like, this is the part that I think, like, the disconnect between the front office and the candidates might be apparent. Like, like last week at the press conference, Don Sweeney saying, like, who wouldn't want this job? And it's like, well, you gotta build a better roster first, or you gotta have a vision of what the roster is. And I don't think that's like a necessarily a problem right now. But with a guy like Sullivan, if you're the top coaching candidate available, assuming David Carl's not going to leave Denver, you really have your pick of what you want. And I think you look at Boston versus New York right now, and you're feeling a little bit more comfortable in terms of what you have and what the expectations are than what Boston is right now. Because Boston, I think, like you gotta have a better supporting cast, right? And you got to know what you're signing up for. And this is where blowing through coaches might hurt them. It just might. I'm not saying that it's the wrong move necessarily, because like I think you can look at all the changes that they've made and see valid reasons for it, but it might hurt you with top candidates where they go, I don't know, man, that front office seems a little wacky right now. Like, it's not a knock on them, but it is a reality check.
Yeah. And I think it also reinforces, I talked about this with Evan of, there's a couple of different groups or tiers, I think, in terms of the Bruins of what they want to target in a head coach. And I think you've got the established former NHL head coaches, right? Which I think like Sullivan was at the top of the list there, especially when it's with a pool of candidates like Gallant and Laviolette, guys that I think we've talked about. Like, you might get a 1-year bump, but your ceiling is only so high with those guys. When I think ideally, if you're the Bruins, you want to bring in a coach that grows, evolves with a new core, and 2-3 years down the road, you've got a good foundation, not just on the ice, but behind the bench too. Like, I think that feels like it's what they want. I think Sullivan, if he is available and wanted to come here and wanted to sign here, you make the exception for that. It's kind of the same as like if John Cooper, like, oh, we need to find a new Spencer Carberry. John Cooper wants to come here? Okay, yeah, sure. Like, I don't think that's going to be happening either. But I think Sullivan was kind of the one outlier there. But now that he's no longer an option, it does feel like the, best path or maybe what is the best case scenario for the Bruins is, again, trying to find that younger coach, the, established assistant or something like that. And there's a lot of candidates there. There's more risk involved. There's probably a lot more legwork that needs to be done in terms of finding the right guy there, as opposed to like, I know we're getting with Laviolette or Tortorella or Gallant, anyone like that. But I think especially where the Bruins have had so much turnover in the coaching ranks, it's like, do you want to bring in a retread who's going to be here for 2-3 years and then do it all over again? Or I'd rather you bring in someone that, again, it's not a known commodity. Maybe there's some risk there. Maybe it doesn't work out, but I'd rather you swing for the fences with someone like that can bring in a new system, new ideas, new, mindset, mentality, whatever you want to call it, as opposed to like, oh, we know like Laviolette's going to be kind of a hard ass and Tortorella and these guys, and the guys will get their shit together for a year. And then whatever goodwill, whatever we're trying to build, it all unravels in 26, 27. Like, I don't see that being the best path moving forward for this team.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I feel like if you're the Bruins, the next hire you make, you want that guy to be in charge for 6 or 7 years versus 3 years, and then you're changing out again. I think that's really going to be like the hallmark of a great team. Like Cassidy got 5 years, right? Like 2017, February 2017 to June 2022. Claude was 2007 to 2017, so a decade. Like, you don't want to be a franchise that's just trading coaches out every 2 to 3 years. Like, sure, you can do it if you want. Like, in some teams, we've seen some teams have success doing that. However, like, how far away are we from the Panthers firing Paul Maurice? Probably 2 or 3 years, right? Yeah. Which at that point would be a 6-year tenure, a 7-year tenure, whatever it is, right? And so you look at Jared Bednar in Colorado. He's been there forever. Like, you know what you're getting. John Cooper in Tampa. Like, he's been there forever. You know what you're getting. Like you can change out coaches, every 2 years if you want, but I feel like the best, most sustainable models tend to have some form of, okay, you got your 3 top dog players, and you got the head coach, and you got the GM. Like, that they're all in unison. They're all on the same page. That's your foundation. The coach plays a part in that. And so I think that your next hire, to your point, you want it to be a guy that you are standing by for at least 5 years. At least 5 years. That's where I want to go with this next hire. If I'm the Boston Bruins, I want a guy that's going to be here in 2030. That's my goal. If I'm the Boston Bruins, I don't want, to your point, the Laviolette, the Tortorella, the quick fix. No. I got to think long-term here, because my franchise is now operating under long-term goals, right? You've restocked the draft cupboard. You got your core pieces locked up. You got to think long-term now. And this is where I wonder about the disconnect we talked about last week, where if you get a GM GMing for his job next year, is that short-term versus long-term? What are we thinking right now with this franchise? But when it comes to the coaching hire, you got to think long-term now.
Yeah. And to your point, right? Like, there is that disconnect. There's that, maybe mixed interpretation, right, of what the goal needs to be for next year. And it's like, if I'm Don Sweeney, and I guess maybe more importantly, I guess the people who are making the decisions, right? If you're like the Jacobs, I understand they said that they want to get, they think they have a team that can be back in the playoffs. That's all well and good, and they very well could. But like, let's look ahead maybe 2 years from now. Let's say you make the playoffs in 25, 26 with Laviolette, and things are back on track, and like Pasta's still Pasternak, and like, oh, Geeky's looking good, and we've got some guys that are stepping up. Minton looks like a player, and Zellers is light. Everything's good. Then maybe you lose in the first round, but it's kind of like Ottawa this year. Like, hey, we're building something here. That's all well and good. And then it's the year after that, and things fall apart, and half the roster's like, hey, this game I play hockey, I actually hate it because I'm playing for Peter Laviolette, which is kind of what happened with the Rangers this year. Miserable. Everything went off the rails. Would you rather, if you're the Bruins and you're Jacobs and you're trying to map out what this team needs to do, would you rather have like a 1 year bump and then it just go back to chaos and have like regression? Like, I feel like there's nothing more demoralizing than when it feels like your team's on the right track and then like there's a setback and you can't claw out of it with that same group that you thought you had a winning formula with. It's like the 21 Patriots, right? They make the playoffs, get blown out, but you felt like, all right, maybe they're building something, and then it just went to shit. And all of a sudden you're now looking at another 2-3 years of just cycling out the pieces, trying to build things back up. It's almost like I'd rather you bring in an unproven coach that, stamps his mark, builds with this team. Maybe it doesn't mean that you make the playoffs. Maybe it means you come up just short, but young guys step up and you're feeling better about how the team is. And then all of a sudden you take off in 26, 27. I'd rather that be the approach. That is not as gratifying. It's not as immediate, right? The dopamine doesn't hit as quickly if you're still missing the playoffs again for another year in a row. But I'd rather you have the long-term vision and feels like you are consistently going up on an upward trend, as opposed to like, oh, let's bring in a guy, let's fix things real quick. Oh, who cares about 26, 27? Let's get, we need Audio Slave blaring again. Like, let's get the good vibes back, even if it means we're all going to be miserable another year down the road and probably much longer after that. So how they view it, I think, is going to be really interesting, because I feel like we all know what the right answer is. It's just, do they want to commit to it, even if it's maybe not as immediate? The returns aren't as immediate for this team.
Yeah. And honestly, like, you're kind of in a wait and see mode until they make their first decision. Like, I think there are guys that you could hire that could maybe accomplish both. I look at a guy who was in the running last time, was Mike Vellucci. I mean, he's a player who is a veteran assistant. He's been around for a long time. I believe he won a Calder Cup, I think, in the AHL. He was in the mix last time. And is that a guy that you look at and say, well, okay, he's been around for a while. He hasn't had an opportunity, but here you go. Like, do you want to go younger? Do you want to go Marco Sturm? Do you want to go Misha Donskov? Two guys that we've talked about on this podcast before. Like I look at it almost like, to cross sports here, like the Boston Celtics, right? Like, when the Boston Celtics hired Brad Stevens, we kind of knew that, like, okay, this is the start of a long process, but it's going to pay off, right? Now, Stevens eventually transitioned to a front office role, but like you look back on that, you're like, geez, I'm really happy they hired Brad Stevens instead of like Mike D'Antoni.
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean?
Like we both
that's
said,
kind of how
we
it
both
is.
said the same exact like retread. You'll get some good
Yeah.
results, but you're never going to get over the hump, right?
Exactly. No, exactly. Like that's kind of, I think, where you have to be, like, but you have to get that call right. It's like another version as the Patriots going from Gerard Mayo. Like they saw a Brad Stevens-esque kind of role for Gerard Mayo. It didn't work out. He wasn't ready. So you have to figure out who that is. And that's where I think the NHL ties are very interesting. As Sweeney mentioned in that press conference, like they want somebody with NHL ties. And I think that, that would lead me to think it's Donskov, it's a Sturm, it's a Vellucci, it's one of those kind of guys, versus David Carl, who I think David Carl might actually tell the Bruins no. I feel like that's where he would probably go right now, given how close he is to Jim Montgomery and that friendship, and he kind of is a candidate who would know where the bodies are buried, so to speak. So that might be a challenge for him, but they got to think long term here, because I think you have a great opportunity here to do that. Which makes that press conference all the more frustrating, where I think you had the perfect opportunity to kind of lay out the vision of what you want, sustainability versus quick results. And we just got so far off track with all of that I feel like, the opportunity to make that pitch kind of went out the window, unfortunately. But now they got to make that pitch behind closed doors, which, they can still do that, and we'll see how it goes.
Yep. We will see. It's still a long ways to go. Again, if you're even looking at a guy like Donskov, you get to see what the Dallas Stars end up doing. Got a game 7 coming up. Switching gears, I guess, to the NHL playoffs. Whole lot's going on. I will say I was kind of worried at the start of this first round because there was a lot of series that felt like they were going to be like done in 5 games. And I feel like the first round's always like the most fun. There's a lot going on. There's always something on TV. Things did ratchet up quite a bit. You have Brad Marchand and the Panthers moving on, beating a very good Tampa Bay team. I thought that team was going to the Cup the way they were playing.
That was my pick.
Yeah.
That was my pick entering the postseason. I liked how they were playing entering the playoffs. They looked really good. And geez, it's just Florida, man. That's what they do. They bust brackets like nobody else.
Dude, they are just a buzzsaw. And I mean, like whether it's Toronto getting over the hump, stuff going on in the West, what has kind of stood out to you about what you've seen so far, other than the fact that holy shit, all these rosters look a lot better than what the Bruins had?
Yeah, I think what stuck out to me is just the speed and the skill. You got teams that are able to create deficits or erase deficits in the blink of an eye. Watching Tampa and Florida game 4, I believe it was, both teams scored 2 goals in 11 seconds, which is wild to me that happened in the same game where both teams scored 2 goals in 11 seconds. Florida scores, they make the comeback. I think one thing that I'm noticing, honestly, is the way that defenses are getting involved. There's a lot more activation. Like you see it in Florida with Seth Jones, with Nate Schmidt. I feel like somebody else scored a goal and I'm missing, but regardless, you see it in Edmonton the other night. Darnell Nurse scores a goal. He activates. Like this is where I think the Bruins, like your next coaching hire, I want them to be able to build out their own staff. And I also want them to get back to sort of what John Gruden had them doing in 22-23, where everybody had the confidence and the ability and sort of the free will, I guess, might be the right word, might be the wrong word, to go out and make plays. Like, it didn't matter if you were Derek Forbert or Connor Clifton or Charlie McAvoy, you were activating, you were pushing pace the other way. And I think that's where this next coaching hire, to bring it back to our first topic, you got to get somebody who can bring more out of your defense and create more attack from the back end, because I think that's where, you could really kind of flip a game on its head. If you have a defenseman who can activate, get a good shot on goal, get it through traffic, or even just lead to something, like your offense is going to be in a better spot in terms of sustainability in 60-minute kind of pressure, which I think is where this game continues to trend in the NHL.
Yeah, I think like the hallmarks you're seeing out of all these teams, and it's not just this year, but it's like go back, I mean, Jesus, like the last 5+ years, the two things you always see like that are winning formulas. And I think we've talked about like the roster construction a lot of big defensemen, a lot of speed and skill up front, but also just the way they play. A lot of shots from the blue line, a lot of activation, a lot of, especially I think in the playoffs where grade A ice is not afforded at the same rate. A lot of these goals are, tips, rebounds, shots through traffic. I think I was doing the math. I think when the Bruins played Carolina last in 22, I want to say about 98% of Carolina's goals felt like they were coming from the point. And it's just, and that's kind of their formula. And that's a team that, what do you know, is always in the mix, is always going on pretty good runs until their goalies like fade into dust,
disintegrate for some reason.
Yeah, it happens every single time. But the way they play, it's the same way that, look at what Florida did in 23 against the Bruins with the amount of point shots and Brennan Montour just being a menace for that team. And so I think, the emphasis on getting shots from the blue line, activating defensemen is going to be huge. But also I think it's just like the speed and skill on display. And I think especially the finishing touch. I look at a team like Dallas, and they're good because they've got a lot of size. They can really have a good puck possession game. But I was watching that game 6 against Colorado, and I wrote down a note here, and I think the math is correct. I think there was about 11 billion 2-on-1 chances in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at the amount of opportunities there. A lot of them generated off of just speed and skating ability. But you look at if the Bruins are in that spot, how many guys are finishing those chances on this team?
Not many.
Not a lot. Where there's a difference when you see a 2-1 breaking out, and I think as we're watching it from the press box, there's still that natural when Pasternak in Game 7 against Toronto, everyone's when you see that. You look at this Bruins team this year. There's a lot of times where if there was a guy on a 2-on-1, I'd be like, if it actually does go in. And I just think you look at Dallas, Colorado, a team that is built on their speed and kind of can make things like that happen. But the Kings, who, again, big physical puck possession team, but have a lot of guys that can put the puck in the back of the net. I think just the amount of skill and scoring touch that has to be present across the roster is a necessity these days. And you can't win anymore, especially whether it's with one souped up top line or, a really, grind out approach. That's just, it's not going to work in today's NHL, especially once you get to the playoffs.
Yeah, and to your point, Linus Ullmark gives up, I want to say, I think it was 18 goals was the final total in that first round series. Toronto got, I believe, 5 goals from the back end. They got Simone Benoit's overtime goal. And then I think both Ekman Larsson and Morgan Riley each had 2 goals in the series. So you get 5 goals right there alone from your back end. It's almost 33% of your scoring. In a 7-game series, that adds up. That matters. Vegas, I know Petrangelo scored. I think Shea Theodore had 2 goals in that series. I think White Cloud may have had one. I might be wrong there. But, again, they're getting scoring from the back end. We're seeing Cam Fowler with the St. Louis Blues.
Going off.
9 points through, 6 games, 5 games, whatever it is. Again, it just matters. It matters this time of year when you can get scoring from the back end. Go back to that the Bruins in 2019 when they went on their run. What really propelled them, I thought, in that 4-game sweep of Carolina, they got goals from the defensemen. And that was the famous quote from Connor Clifton. Yeah, we're all under 6 feet, but we're causing havoc back there. It's that's what they were doing. They were creating opportunities. They were scoring. They were capitalizing on them. And so you got to have that, right? And you got to either have the ability to score goals from the back end, or to spark the play the other way, like you're talking about. That is just so important this time of year. And I think the Bruins, all things considered, they got some guys back there that can do it. Charlie McAvoy, we've seen him do it. Hampus Lindholm, we've seen do it before. The Bruins don't win Game 7 last year against Toronto without Hampus Lindholm. He scores the goal, and he sets up David Pastrnak for the game winner in overtime.
Takeover mode.
Nikita Zadorov, we've seen activate through the neutral zone and make some plays happen. We saw that in Vancouver when he was a Canuck last year in the postseason, making plays happen. So Mason Lohrei, we know what he can do, obviously. So they got it. They got it on the back end, but they need a coach that can really let it fly and let it come to the table, because if the Bruins are going to have a team that is not as adept at scoring goals as we want them to be, you got to get the offense from the back end. And that was the disconnect that I felt between what they said in July and what we saw for 82 games, where in July, they were talking about Hampus creating offense, Mason creating offense, Nikita creating offense. And yes, there were injuries. We all have to agree. But then you saw them play and you're like, oh no, they can't be that kind of team. They have to be like a shutdown kind of team. And that it just didn't jive, right? So you gotta have a vision, commit to it, but have a coach that allows that vision to come to life.
100%. Looking ahead at the playoffs, do you have an augmented, a changed Stanley Cup final prediction now?
Florida? I have a hard time seeing any of the three teams left in the East besides Florida beating them. I think Washington,
they held Tampa to like what 22 shots on goal per game. Like they suffocated that team. Kucherov, yikes, dude, didn't do much in that first game.
I mean, he's so damn talented. It's so befuddling. Like that. I've never seen a player who will rack up 140 points, but like you're like, I didn't really notice him much. Like it's just so weird that like that's kind of how he is. Like, does the game just come too easy to him? And like he thinks it's always going to be easy, and that's just how he plays. Like I don't know. I don't know what it is with him. We've said it before on this podcast, but like, listen, shout out to the Florida Panthers coaching staff. They are a factory for rebuilding broken, imperfect defensemen. It is unbelievable how well their defense plays. To your point, every postseason we do this. You know, like 2023, they were doing it with Mark Stahl and Radko Gudas and Josh Mahora. And now they're doing it with Nate Schmidt, Seth Jones, who was on the worst contract in hockey. It's wild the way that they're able. I mean, geez, they turned Gustav Forsling from waiver claim into like franchise pillar defenseman.
Monster.
Like it's just it's unbelievable the work that they've done down in Florida. And I think that's, you know, so much of the focus when it comes to talking the Panthers is about the physicality, how prickly they are, the two-way play of Bennett and Reinhart and Barkov to go with the prickliness of Tkachuk and Bennett and now Marchand. The defense has been the secret sauce. That is what's allowed them to be this good every springtime. It's just the defense just knows when to lock down. They're really good at just like Nico Mikkola went from being like spare part to legit
bum. Oh yeah, wow, this guy's a battering ram. Literally hitting guys when they're on the ice, but whatever. That's Florida.
Yeah, that's how they play. And hey, tip your cap to it because you know that's how the Boston Bruins helped win a Stanley Cup in 2011. And so I think like you know you have to appreciate and respect the way they're able to do that. You don't like it, but you understand why it makes them effective. But yeah, that's been the secret sauce, man. And that defense, you know, how they've been able to keep that machine humming along no matter the personnel. It's been really impressive. Yeah, so I want to say Florida. I got Florida right now. Florida, Vegas, maybe a rematch of 2023.
That's what I have. That's what I have because I don't care who's coming out of that Winnipeg St. Louis series. If I still imagine it's Winnipeg. I think Vegas is gonna chew up Hellebuck. Dude gives me like anxiety, gives me heart palpitations, and I'm not a Winnipeg Jets fan, thank God. But like, yikes, man. Again, would it surprise you if Game 6 is tonight in St. Louis if he gives up a 5 spot again? No, not really.
Connor Hellebuck is what like the angriest Bruins fan who calls in a 98.5 The Sports Hub and Felger and Maz thinks Tuukka Rask is. Like he's actually what they all think that Tuukka Rask was for the Bruins.
It is funny because I think now that like Tuukka is retired and I think people see him around a lot and they realize he's like a pretty chill dude. And they're like, oh, you know, maybe we took for granted this guy who's just consistently like pretty good. And then sometimes he was fucking unreal for like 10 plus years. Oh, there's a luxury to that.
Yeah. There is. Funny. I mean, it is. This
guy's just chilling at Buff's Pub and he's going to have at least a 9-10 save percentage every single year.
Yeah. I remember the first time I saw him after retirement, I was like we were all doing some like charity event thing. And I was like, do you miss it? And he just goes, fuck no. It's just so funny. He's just so candid. He's like, no, I don't miss it at all.
Respect. Honestly, like, you need that, right?
You do. You do.
All right. Well, Ty, we're going to shift gears and look at the NHL Draft Lottery, which the NHL has finally decided to tell us when it is. Great. It's on Monday. But before we do that.
So weird. Why do they do that? It's just so odd.
It makes no sense. Meanwhile, like the NBA, I think, has scheduled the NBA finals through 2037.
Yes,
I think
we know the exact dates and times and everything.
Yes, we know Barney James the Fourth when he's going to play in like 2061, but we don't know anything else. But I digress. We're going to talk more about the NHL Draft Lottery, which again, yes, is happening on Monday. But before we do that, let's take a quick break. Hear from our good friends over at Game Time Tickets. Hockey season is over in Boston, but don't fret because the Celtics are beginning their quest for Banner 19, and Fenway Park is already bumping this spring. If you want to catch a Sox game or watch the Seas take to the court on Causeway, you got to go with Game Time Tickets. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA, NHL, and MLB tickets. There's nothing like taking in a Celtics playoff game at the Garden. The crowd roaring when Jaylen Brown throws down a slam, Tatum sinking a three. I was in the Garden for Game 5 against the Mavericks last year, and when Peyton Pritchard hit that buzzer beater three, I thought the roof was going to come off, land somewhere in Chelsea, the Mystic. It would have been a big to-do, would have been a mess, but in the moment it would have been pretty sick. It was electric. And if you want to get to the Garden this spring, Game Time Tickets has you covered. Game Time Tickets app makes it easy to sort through which specific game, concert, or other event you want to attend, and shows you the best spots available to take in the action. Game Time also has unbelievable last-minute deals where you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sporting events, comedy shows, concerts, and so much more. If you want to be like our good friend Evan Marinofski and go to 500 billion Red Sox games at like 5:45 p.m., you go Game Time Tickets, last-minute deals, get a great deal, get to Fenway, hang out with Derek White on the Green Monster like Evan does. It's great. Take my word for it. So what are you waiting for? Take the guesswork out of buying basketball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Shout out once again to our good friends over at Game Time Tickets. Ty, yes, the NHL Draft Lottery is finally set for Monday. We're finally going to figure out where the Bruins do end up picking in that draft order. I brought up the pick odds right now. We'll run through it again really quick. They have a chance to get the number one overall pick, 8.5% chance. They can get a 8.6% chance of getting the number two pick. On Tankathon, they have a 0.3% chance of getting the third overall pick, but I don't know how actually realistic that is. I did not go to school to crunch numbers and do math, so I don't know how accurate that is. 24.5% chance of staying where they currently are at the number 5 pick. 44% chance for the most likely outcome is number 6 overall. And then there's also a 14.2% chance they drop the lowest they can to number 7 overall. So essentially you've got a little under 18% chance of getting a shot at Michael Misa, who we assume is going to be a top 2 pick. And then you're hovering around, 5, 6, 7 in terms of trying to get kind of that next tier of player, right? The Anton Frondels, the Caleb Desnoyers, James Hagens, O'Brien, a few other guys there. I think, we're going to have a lot to talk about this summer in terms of who they're going to take, where they end up falling. But I also feel like at this point, when you look at the way the draft order is kind of set up, the Bruins are going to come out of this with at least a really intriguing blue chip prospect, I think. Like, they're not like at the risk of falling out of, I think, the tier where all of a sudden it's like, well, we got to choose between Roger McQueen or a D-man. Like, I don't think that's going to be the case. At least that's what I say right now.
Yeah, I think, by the way, real quick, I think on the third overall situation, I think that number is so low because it's dominated by the 1 and 2. So if one of them has to fall backwards or if 2 move up, like they're kind of locked into one of those. So I think that's why that's the case. I'm not 100% on that. I'm not going to lie to you, Connor. I ran the Tankathon simulator while you were doing that lovely ad read. By the way, Evan, thanks for inviting Connor and I to Red Sox games. You
must be nice.
Fraud. Yeah, must be nice. Must be nice to write for a magazine and never have to do anything because magazines are already just out. Anyway.
Unbelievable.
I'm going to give him a peanut. I really am.
Yes. The dust.
That's gonna be. I've told him before. Like Don Sweeney's gonna give him a scoop. It's gonna be a scoop of peanuts.
It's gonna be Planters. It's gonna be Mr. Peanut.
I ran the draft lottery simulator 3 times while you did that ad read.
They put you at 27 overall.
The Boston Bruins were picking 6th, 7th, and 6th in that. So not great, not ideal, not what you want.
Means they're due for a winner. That's how this works, right?
That should be how it's done, honestly.
I watch Ocean's 11.
I've seen it before. I've seen Smoking Aces. I know what can happen to Ben Affleck if he goes to Vegas. No, so I think that you look at sort of where they are. Thank God they didn't win more games. That's what I got to say. Thank God that we're not debating between them being, say 5th overall and like 12th overall. Like there is a difference there, right? And so they should get somebody. To your point, they should get somebody. It's just, who are you getting, right? Like who falls to you? Does someone get stupid? Does someone fall in love with somebody who's a little bit lower on the rankings right now? And does that allow someone to fall to you? I'm not a James Hagens guy. I'm just not. But if he falls to you, and let's say you fall and you're at 7th overall and he's there, I don't know. That's going to be hard to say no, right? And so that's kind of, I think, where the Bruins are. But yeah, to your point, they should get somebody. I would like somebody who's got some two-way touch, because I think the way that the playoff bracket is set up, you're going to see a lot of Austin Matthews and a lot of Barkov and Lundell for the next foreseeable future. So I want somebody that can hang in that kind of fight. But I also just want the talent. I want the talent. You need a forward, not a defenseman. I'm a firm believer on that. But give me the most talented forward. Shoots up the top of the board if he's a center. That's how I'm looking at this right now from the Boston Bruins.
Yeah. And again, these scouting reports, these rankings are going to change drastically between now and the end of June. Bob McKenzie released his, I think, final top 16 rankings today. So I'll just run through at least the top 8. Number 1, Matthew Schaefer, the defenseman. I don't think he's moving from that spot. Number 2, Misa. Again, not a surprise. So those are, I think, pretty much a lock that those are going to be the 2 guys up the top there. If you're the Bruins and you move up to 1 or 2, you take Misa, I imagine. And again, I think actually Schaefer is really, really good. And I think you're the Bruins and you're rooted in your defensive identity. I get the appeal, right? Of we could get Canadian Miro Heiskanen on our left side. But I think also the gap between Misa and Schaefer, I don't think it's as seismic as it was a few months ago, where I think everyone's like, oh, Schaefer's the lock. What Misa did this year, I think, is showing that, hey, he's not maybe a generational prospect, but no, he can be a top line playmaking center at the next level. So I think if you move him to the top 2, makes probably our lives a lot easier and probably the Bruins' lives a lot easier in terms of all right, yeah, we'll take Misa and be more than happy with that being the result. So we'll see What if
you win the 1st overall, right? Could you get Chicago and San Jose in a bidding war?
You probably could.
Hey, when you guys want Schaefer, we're open for business.
We will take the number 2 pick and Macklin Celebrini, please.
Just something. I don't know. Just something could you do what the Patriots couldn't do? And get the 1st overall pick, but get some future assets out of it. I don't hate the idea, because you are not going to get Schaefer. You're just not gonna. I wouldn't imagine.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Again, I see the appeal, and I could see again, the Bruins would probably have that internal discussion of do we value more the potential 60, 70 point center in Misa or the Norris finalist in Schaefer? That's what he ends up being. You got to make that call, but I still think that the need is so glaring that you take the guy that had 61 goals in 66 games in Misa. I don't think you have that. So those are the top 2 in McKenzie's ranking.
Get ready to learn top line center Matty Poitras, buddy.
I know. Yeah, exactly. It's I get the appeal of Schaefer. He's a really, really good prospect, even though he really was hurt this year. But yeah, you can get excited about what a decor of him, McAvoy, Lindholm are for the next 10, maybe not 10 years. I don't think Lindholm's playing a 10-year contract here, at least here in Boston. But that enthusiasm wanes when you look up front and you see what your center pipeline is. It's just, you need talent down there. So those are the top 2, no surprise. And then McKenzie, the rest of his list, number 3, Porter Martone, which I think if you're the Bruins, you're hoping that some team takes him before you, because that, again, bumps down that next tier of centers down to your spot, and at least gives you maybe more of a pick of who you want to go with. So Martone, power forward. He's number 3 on McKenzie's list. 4 is Anton Frundell. 5 is James Haggens. So again, he's slipping a little bit. And then 6, Caleb Desnoyers. 7, O'Brien. And then 8, Roger McQueen, who I'm steering clear of if I'm the Bruins. I don't want a guy who's, red flags or a back injury. Not good. My back hurts, but I'm also like over the age of 30. I don't want an 18-year-old who's got a bad back. And also his skating is not that great. So, listen, I think if you're the Bruins and best case scenario, you get Misa if the lottery kind of falls your way. But if you're able to stay at 5 or 6, you're going to have at least one of ideally Haggens, Frundell, or Desnoyers to pick from. And from there, it comes down to who you value more and who's left amongst that grouping, because it all of a sudden becomes very interesting if I imagine Frundell is probably the first guy, at least right now, that's off the board. I think he's the guy that's kind of seen his stock rise a little bit. And I really, really like Frundell's game. I think he might be my favorite out of that tier 2 of centerman prospect. They're all good. Like I actually think you're going to get a really good player, however you want to look at it. But I think a shot first guy who's been really racking up numbers in Sweden, and Frundell is a good player. But what if it becomes Haggens, who entered the year with like the hype of being the number 1 guy, or Desnoyers? Like, what if you're picking between those 2 guys? Because I feel like Desnoyers is the safer pick, right? And again, bigger body, 2-way guy. But, Evan would be beside himself if the Bruins had 5 and had to pick between the 2 and Haggens drops to 6. But where are you with that? Because I feel like, as you said, there is some risk involved with a guy like Haggens as to what can he be at the NHL level, especially like when you look at some of what his weaknesses are.
So I'm trying to operate, like, let's just keep it to Desnoyers and Haggens, right? Like, if they hit their ceiling, their NHL ceiling, you would say that Haggens projects more as like a Jack Hughes type, right? Like Jack Hughes, Connor Bedard, like somewhere along.
Clayton. I think Clayton Keller is a pretty good comparison, right?
Desnoyers is more what? Sean Couturier?
Yeah, that's a good one.
I kind of like Couturier. I know that makes me weird, but like I kind of like Couturier. I kind of like that 70-point 2-way do it all kind of guy. And it's just, what do they need more of? What is the situation going to call for more of, right? Like I think that with the natural talent that you have hopefully coming, right? Like Will Zellers obviously is racking up accolades in the USHL. He's going to go play college hockey now. You have other guys that like you're going to target. Let's say they bring in a big time winger in the offseason. Like, I'm not as worried about your scoring if you do those things, right? If those things hit their ceiling or whatever, you go out and you get some guys like I'm not as worried about that. It's down the middle. I'm just worried about what they can be down the middle long term, because I think every great team has that really strong base, right? Like, and I think what's allowed Toronto to get out of the first round and to be more of a Stanley Cup threat has been Austin Matthews' development as a two-way center. Like, I think that's been huge for them. It's been huge for him. You also have John Tavares, who can win a crap ton of faceoffs. And that's allowed them to go on deeper runs than they were in years prior. I look at Florida. I look at Vegas. I just feel like down the middle is just so important to have a good structure down the middle and a good system down the middle. And so I just think, like, right now, as you're currently built, Pavel Zacha's a better wing than he's a center. That's just how I feel. Elias Lindholm is going to be 30 years old soon. Matty Poitras 5'10". I like him, but he's 5'10". Casey Middlestad, he's an offense first kind of centerman. He's not somebody that I'm going to rely on to win a battle with Alexander Barkov. So I just think that's what you need. That's what you need long term. And so I want a little bit of two-way jam there. I just do. And I don't want the guy who's going to be so vanilla and boring that he's not an impact player. But like Sean Couturier, when he was healthy in his prime, really good two-way centerman. Really, really good two-way center. And so, I mean, if I'm picking which one I want, I'm probably going there. That's just how I feel though right now, what they need and where the long-term scope of the Eastern Conference and what the Bruins are going to have to go through every springtime. That's where I'm focusing.
Yeah, and it's almost like, not to get into another discussion of, because I've had a week long look at knowing everything about Will Campbell's arm length and like putting a ceiling or a limit on players based on just how they measure out. But like, I feel like when you are bringing in a centerman, a foundational piece like that, bringing in a guy who is like 5'10", like the ceiling is only so high in terms of how much more they can evolve their game necessarily. Like, right? Like you look at guys like Austin Matthews is what, 6'3", 6'2", 6'3". You
Mhm.
look at guys like Eichel, who's 6'2", like 200 pounds. And like, listen, they were brought in as offensive minded, like, guys that are going to rack up a lot of points. But like when you have like such a strong frame like that fills out, I feel like that allows you to kind of round into form as you get older and mature. And like you look at what Austin Matthews is now. Look at like Eichel this year. Like since he's been with Vegas, like he was known as a guy like, hey, his value is when he's healthy, he's going to give you 80 points. He's going to be a beast. Now he does that while also playing like Selke level like defensive play, right? Like it's not
Yeah.
just like guys like Barkov who, arrived in the league. Like this guy's going to win a couple of Selkies. Like he's just a natural, smart, technically sound two-way centerman. Some guys, when they're that big and they're able to just round their game and mature, it kind of comes once you fill out your frame. And it's like, not to say that like James Hagen's 28, 29 is going to be just like a pipsqueak getting knocked around. Like I'm not going to put that label on the guy. It's kind of the same thing with Will Campbell. You're becoming more of an outlier when you are that size, right? Like,
Mhm.
and people say Haggens isn't like a empty calorie offensive only guy. He's got a really mature game, but there's only so much you can do when you are that size. So I don't think James Haggens is like a bad prospect. I think like worst case scenario for James Haggens, he's like a 65-point winger that
Mhm.
brings a lot of skill. He's like Nikolai Ehlers. You hope he's maybe does a little bit better in the playoffs than Ehlers, but he's going to be a good player. It's just in terms of what he could be, it feels like guys like Frundell or Desnoyers offer the safer projection of like they can impact the game in a lot more ways moving forward. And again, that could be wrong. Like the Bruins could take Desnoyers and he's a really good player, and Haggens goes back to BC and he puts up fucking 65 points and is ripping shit up in March with whatever team takes him. Would not surprise me at all. He is a damn good player. It's just you have to weigh which one best fits what you need moving forward if you're the Bruins.
Yeah, and I got to be honest, I haven't seen every BC game this year, so like I don't have a full scope of Haggens in like the two-way game, but like if you're on that smaller side, you have to become more like Sebastian Aho, right? Like you can't just be Jack Hughes just scoring points but impacting the game in no other fashion if you're not scoring. Like and does he have that? Can he do that? If he can do that, that changes the name that changes the game a little bit, but even Aho I think is still 6 feet tall, 6'1", like so like that is a factor. I think I think especially if Patra is part of your future, I don't know how deep you can go down the middle if your top two centers are 5'10". Like it's just listen, I'm a short. I understand. I understand the limitations that one has when you are a short. It just it's hard. It's hard. Like and is that
It's a
what the
hard life
Bruins
out
need
there.
right now? It is, dude. I'm like in between like sizes for everything. I just like sometimes like, all right, am I a small or a medium in this jacket? What do I do? And then you find out you're some third size that doesn't even exist. It's a hard life out there. It really is. So
Yeah, it's
um
not great.
I just think like, I have to go with whatever like, and I know I'm speaking on both sides of my mouth here, but like you need speed and skill, yes, but you the way that you're gonna truly upset a team is like you got to be strong down the middle and you got to be able to play a two-way game. Like the Bruins in the first year without Bergeron and Krejci, they go 6 games against the Florida Panthers. But what happened in game 6? Barkov ate their freaking lunch at the faceoff dot. That's how they gave up the game-winning goal, by the way. It was an ozone faceoff for the Bruins. They lost it. Florida goes down. They score the game win, what proved to be the game-winning goal. Like, that's what happened. And I know you're hyper fixating on one moment, but like, if you can't win the faceoff battle, and if you can't win some key draws late, you're going to be chasing the game the whole time, right? Territorially, you're going to get dominated. And that's something that's going to put a lot of strain on your goaltender, a lot of strain on your defense. And so I want to continue to bridge that gap a little bit between the Boston Bruins and the Florida Panthers or the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Ottawa Senators, whoever it is, right? And so that's why I'm leaning a guy that has a bit more size, a bit more range, and a bit more two-way know-how while also playing center. That's just how I look at it.
Yeah, and I mean, to what we said earlier about like this team needs speed and skill and all that stuff. Like, I think it's also important to note that yes, Desnoyers, Frundell, Hagens are all slightly different in how they play. But even if I think James Hagens has, I think, easily the best skating ability and probably like the most skill. It's not to say that like, it's the same thing with any, I think, young player coming up in the NHL now. All these guys have a ton of skill. Like Frundell's, I think, got the best shot. Frundell, like you watch his highlights out there, and I'm not going to pronounce what the second tier league in Sweden is, but that guy rips it. It's almost like if that's a guy that I know people say Frundell's probably the most NHL ready of that second tier of guys. You want to put him next to David Pastrnak and have him just rip shots? I'll take that. Like, he's got an elite shot. And, like, Desnoyers is a guy that, he doesn't have as much skill because he might only be a 60, 70-point guy in the NHL. You'll take that. I don't know if you're watching his, like, highlights in, the queue and what he's doing there, but guy can finish in tight, plays around the net, like, has a skill set of, like, tipping pucks, doing kind of the little things. Not as flashy as dangling through guys or rifling a puck from, like, the left circle, what have you, but he's got the ability to finish in tight. It's not like this, it's Hagens or a bunch of guys that are just going to like work so hard just to get 21 goals on the year. Like all those guys have the skill. It's just what profile are you looking for there? And I don't think you can, again, I don't think you're going to go wrong. If it is Hagens, I'm not going to be like, fuck, dude. Like they only got this guy that's supposed to be like an 80-point guy in the NHL. Like I think the most important thing is they're going to get a good player. It's just who's going to be available for him. And it, again, harkens back to like, man, this would be a lot easier if they just got a top 2 pick and we just know it's going to be Michael Misa, right? Because then all of a sudden the debate kind of goes away because you don't have to think that hard. Unless like all of a sudden they're like at number 2 and like San Jose is like, oh, fuck it, we'll take Misa too. Let's have 3 great centers. Which at that point you're like, shit, all right, well. So
the trade phones are open. No, I do feel that it just there's so much obviously weighing on this, and there's so much, but like what you do will decide what you do with other players. Like if you do pick Hagens, okay, then you're trading Matt Patra. That's what's going to happen. There's no way you're going to build around that and have that be your 1-2 down the middle. Like you just can't do it. And it's possible that Patra is not going to be that kind of guy. I don't know what he is. He wants to tell you that he can be like Braden Point, because that was the player that he tries to model his game after. He's got a long way to go to be Braden Point. And if I'm curious if we meet Hagens, if they draft him and he says, oh, I want to be like Braden Point. It's like, okay, now you get 2 of those. Like
this is getting out of hand.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be great. But like, I don't know, man, you got to get a bigger, I don't know.
You'd rather want a Braden Point and an Anthony Cirelli instead of 2 like versions of Braden Point.
Ideally, I want Steven Stamkos and Braden Point. That's what I really want. That's where, and I don't know if you can get that kind of guy. I understand, but like, I think sustainability long term wise, like if you can get that blend, like you mentioned Eichel, like I'll mention Mark Stone as well. If you can get that blend of that 2-way know-how, but the ability to produce points offensively, like that's kind of what they need, right? And especially if you're going to cling to the idea that like players have to thrive within your structure, well then, okay, then I got a feeling James Hagen's not your guy. If that's how you look at, players coming in have to fit your structure and have to play great 2-way hockey. Like, all right, then you're going to spend 3 years trying to make this guy something he's not. So have fun with that.
Yep. So we will see. We'll be there on Monday. We won't be at Secaucus, New Jersey, but we will be at Warrior. I think Don Sweeney's speaking afterwards. So
that's right. He is. I was like, why are we going to be at Warrior? I was like, are we playing a game?
We are. We are playing. We are playing for the ping pong balls. So get ready to learn Michael Misa, buddy. Actually, no. Get ready to learn 27th pick. We play so poorly that they send us to the Nether Realm. So we will see what happens though,
buddy.
On Monday,
I can lead a good breakout. Don't be fooled. I can lead a good breakout.
Okay, then you will lead the charge. Then I will not be partaking. I won't help the cause in any capacity at all. Ty, before we let you go, where can we read your stuff? Where can we hear you on the airwaves? All that good stuff.
Well, you can't hear me anywhere now. My show's been canceled. No, it's just gone for the. No, it's just gone. It's done for the off season.
It's in hibernation.
But you can find me at 985sportshub.com. You can also hear me on occasion on 985 Sports Hub. And you can find me online. Just search my name, Ty Anderson. You'll find me, S-O-N, not S-E-N. And you'll find me anywhere. So that's where I am. How about you?
Yes, you can read my stuff over at Boston.com and the Boston Globe. We have you covered every step of the way this Bruins offseason, starting with the draft lottery. I'll be in lovely Providence tonight, the Providence Bruins game, seeing how some of the younger players like Patra, Dan Zloshmelis, Evan's favorite prospect, UMass's own. He's playing at a pretty high level down there, so I'll be down there watching those games, seeing how some of those players do. So you can read all my stuff over there on Boston.com and the Boston Globe. And you can follow me on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days, at Conor Ryan _93. Ty, thank you once again for talking hockey with us. This was episode 326 of Poke the Bear. You fans have a great rest of your week.